Welcome to the Quality Conversation brought to you by C Squared. This show is all about discussing what quality means in the talent acquisition ecosystem. I'm your host, Serge Boudreau, and today I have the legendary Brian Fink as a guest. Brian is a talent acquisition partner at McAfee. Welcome to the show, Brian. I'm really excited to do this because I've known you for quite a long time and we have never recorded a podcast together.
No, we haven't. So Serge, thank you for having me on the Quality Conversation. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk about that, about the quality of candidate and how we're making sure that we're meeting candidates where they are and helping them go from better to best. So let's get fired up, man. What's on the agenda today?
Yeah, well, you've been doing this for quite a long time, so I want the audience to know a little bit of your background. How did you get into talent acquisition?
I got into talent acquisition about 18 years ago by accident.
Like everyone else, right?
Well, here's the thing is that I was going through the interview process with a number of different RPO firms, and I didn't like the way that I was being handled. That I was being treated like a piece in a funnel, right? That somebody was going to monetize and put out in the field, whatever. And it was just it was very robotic. And that was about 18, almost 20 years ago. And I had a really bad experience interviewing through an RPO. And I felt that it cost me the opportunity. So I was like, we have a problem here. I'm going to change the face of RPOs. And I went to a gentleman named Jeff Audette at Vanguard Management Group. Shout out to Jeff. Shout out to Michael Whaley, who was kind of the pioneer who helped me come along in this process. And I said, look, my mom, and Serge, you and I, we've talked about this. I'm a mama's boy. Is that my mom always says that if you see a problem, don't complain about it. Find a solution. And so I said to Jeff, I was like, look, recruiting is broken. I think we can do this better. I think we can get this done better in a few different ways and treat everybody in the process fairly, whether they're the hiring manager or whether they're the candidate. And Jeff said, I don't have the budget to do this. And I said, okay, hire me anyhow, and I'll deliver on this. And if I don't deliver on this, you can can me after 90 days. Like this was bad recession. I remember that the suit that I bought for the interview, I went to Target and bought a suit to interview in. And Jeff was like, about those shoes, we gotta change those shoes, right? And I bought new shoes with my first commission check. But the reality is that Jeff gave me an opportunity, and in 120 days, I had turned around his worst performing territory and made it his number 2 performing territory in the country, South Florida. Jeff's a great mentor. We talk all the time. I probably owe him lunch or he owes me lunch. Jeff, that's me saying we need to go get hot wings. This is it's a unique path. Originally, I was on the business development side of the desk, and then I jumped over to the recruiting side of the desk and I started running full cycle. So that's how I got started. And it was the fact that Jeff and Michael Whaley took a chance on me.
That was 18 years ago. And you mentioned that recruitment was broken then. Is it still broken?
So I think it has its flaws. I don't think that it's broken. I think that it has opportunities for us to enrich both the recruiting process for the hiring manager and for the candidate. And I think sometimes when we talk, we don't talk about them in a dichotomous fashion. We should have that conversation because they're both really important agents in the process. I think that there are some metrics that don't make any sense. Time to fill only makes sense when you've got a deliverable that you've got to get out the door. And if you don't have the talent to reach that deliverable, then it doesn't make sense. It's kind of spurious, right? Like I've had ad nauseum conversations with individuals about that, is that quality of hire is really functionally more important because the quality of hire doesn't just impact the organization from a immediate balance sheet perception, but it raises the bar as to the overall talent and aptitude of an organization. I was fortunate enough that I was part of the team at Amazon. AWS. I was part of the team at Apple. I was part of the team at Twitter. These are all organizations that hired not to tell a person what they needed to do, but to have a person that was empowered and had the level of intelligence to deliver on what needed to be delivered on. So if we're looking at any kind of metric, maybe we should be looking at what does a person do in their first 18 months of employment. That tour of duty analogy that Reid Hoffman spoke about in the book The Alliance, which was from like 2016. I don't even know if anybody read that book. I think everybody read
I haven't.
Blitzscaling. Yeah, it's a good
I've
book.
read Blitzscaling. Blitzscaling is probably my favorite Reid Hoffman book.
Yeah, but like nobody's read The Alliance. I sit here in my office. My office is covered in books. Like I'm reaching for it right now. This is what I'm reading for the holiday break. I'm reading
Yeah.
Genesis, which is the last Henry Kissinger book. It's on AI. I'm reading Mind Shift by Brian Solis. I'm reading Never Split the Difference so I can work better with candidates to understand that. I think The Alliance is a must read. It's a short book. It'll take you 2.5 hours to get through.
Hmm. Well, let's dig in onto quality of hire, because a lot of organizations measure it. I know it's been a constant challenge for me in a talent acquisition role as far as discussing with the leadership. Okay, what is a quality hire? How far do we go back? What are the key components that we look at? Is it like they've been there a year? What are the metric? Is it a survey that we do with our employees and with our hiring managers? Like, how do you look at a year after someone has been hired and that was a quality hire?
Okay, so I think there are a few different metrics that you can put into place that are hard and fast
Yeah.
numbers. I recruit developers and engineers. So, how much code did they push? And of the code they pushed, how much of it was resilient? How much of it was bug free? You can look at those things, you can quantify them. Things that are also easy to quantify are how many referrals did this person present to the organization,
Interesting.
right? And how many of those referrals made it through our interview process? Did they ultimately raise the bar in terms of hiring?
That's a new
I
one.
think,
I like that.
well, I mean, like, Serge, somebody you should have on the conversation, and I'm happy to make an introduction. Andy Pittman, I'm outing you. I'm telling them that Chip Bob does great work around this and that he should have you on the conversation. Andy Pittman, years ago when he was at MailChimp, we had a conversation specifically about the quality of hire and the quality of referral. Is that not every referral is a timestamp as to somebody's individual contributions to the team, or is it, right? So I was like, Andy, somebody could make 100 referrals and they just get lucky.
Yeah.
They're not getting lucky. It's if you have somebody who has that 100% referral to hire ratio, that's somebody you should be going back to and you should be tapping on. And when we talk about referrals, we've often said, and the data by Harvard Business Review supports this, is that referrals, not only being the number one source of hire, they're the number one quality source of hire because those individuals are retained much more simply than other individuals. And I'm not talking about throwing pizza parties or things of that nature, but they work with their friends, they solve problems with their friends, they solve challenges with their friends. That leads me to something that's a little esoteric, it's a little difficult to
Yeah.
measure, is this person solving the challenge that they were hired to solve?
Hmm.
Because that really makes them mediocre. Or are they solving this challenge and other challenges that were presented? So we're going a little bit deeper on that, right? And that
Hmm.
becomes more of an art and less of a science. I think that by using machine learning put together with employee surveys and information from goal setting agendas and from engagement, we could probably look to see if a hire at this point is engaged in that process. The other thing, and this comes out of, I don't want to seem like I'm selling a book for Reid Hoffman. I mean, he guy's got plenty of money, but one of the things that came out of that book is when somebody finishes their mission, the thing that they're supposed to do in an organization, do they stay with the organization and look for another mission where they can broaden their skill set and their horizon, or do they exit the organization, right? And that talks about the organizational health and how it impacts an individual's ability and momentum to grow in the org. So,
Hmm.
Serge, I think that there are a few different ways that you can measure this. I hope I brought some different icebergs for us to climb up.
There's one element that I want to dig in deeper because I've seen some research that actually says the opposite. And it's when it comes to quality of hire, when it comes to referrals. A couple of years ago, I think a year ago, and I'm trying to remember who it was. It basically came out to say referrals were lower quality candidate at the end of the day when they were hired, and the reason is a lot of times they actually bypass the whole application process, also the interview process was treated a little bit differently because, hey, it's Jim that referred and Jim's awesome, so this person must be awesome, right? I'm not 100% convinced that referrals are the best quality for exactly what the points that I just made is like, are we kind of just like, because that person knows someone, we're going to bypass and maybe ignore red flags that we wouldn't in other ways. But what's your take there?
Well, Serge, my immediate perception is if you have a standardized interviewing process,
Yes.
it's going to ferret out those red flags. If you don't have a standardized interview process, you're going to overlook those. Just to put something out into the ether, which has been well documented, is that AWS and Amazon, they have a third party impartial member of the interview panel known
Interesting.
as the bar raiser, right? And the bar raiser is supposed to assess whether or not that individual is better than 50% of the organization that currently
Mhm.
work in that role. As we talk about that, that is meant to eliminate the bias. When you have paired interviewing, the way that we did it at Twitter, where you had one person who would ask a question, somebody that would be taking notes, and you'd have two individuals that could interpret this, that eliminates that bias that really tries to get at the heart and the strength of the conversation, right?
Really good point, because standardized interview is the solution for a lot of this. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations actually don't do standardized interview, or they have it in their process, but they skip it way too many times. And that's part of the challenge that we're coming across. Like, interviewing is, I think, the most underrated aspect of talent acquisition. Like, how do
Oh,
we
I think
support?
reference checking is the most underrated
Oh,
part.
interesting. Tell me
Yeah,
more.
I mean, okay, so Serge, here's the thing is that if you gave me two references, a colleague and a manager that you
Yeah.
worked with, okay, and you said to me, call them and have them tell you good things about Serge, I'm going to do that. As I'm going to say, Jacob, I know you worked with Serge at Mission Co. We're really excited about bringing him to McAfee. I need you to tell me one weakness that Serge has because I think Serge is really strong in a lot of different areas, but I want to make sure that I'm planning on taking that weakness and making it a strength.
Hmm.
Oh, he doesn't have any weaknesses. Well, I got to be honest with you. If you can't tell me a weakness that he has, I'm going to end the call and I'm not going to hire Serge.
Hmm.
Okay. I realize it's a little tactic where I'm putting the gun to somebody's head, but that's the first. And they say, oh, Serge is disorganized, which Serge is not disorganized. Anybody who comes on this podcast, Serge has sent copious notes about what he wanted to talk about. And we've completely gone off tangent, but whatever. It's all good. But the reality of it is he says Serge is disorganized. How is he disorganized? Well, he does this, this, and this. Okay. So when I call Michael or Michelle, who also worked with Serge at Mission Co., I can say, Michelle, real quick, I've heard great things about Serge. I just want to lean into something. I heard Serge is a little disorganized. Can you speak to how that's affected you and your deliverables? No, Serge is really not disorganized. Serge is this, Serge is that, whatever. Serge does this. If I was going to say Serge had a weakness, Serge's weakness is this. Okay,
Hmm.
so real quick, what I've developed is I've developed rapport with two different individuals. I've created a onboarding plan that is going to make sure that Serge is a quality hire. That I know that Serge is disorganized according to one person, and according to Michelle, Serge is super detail oriented. That sometimes he gets into the weeds and the minutia.
Hmm.
So now I'm able to go back to the hiring manager and say, "Look, I've done a reference check on Serge, and these are what two people told me. And I want to make sure that you're aware of these things because these are obstacles that you're going to have to manage Surge beyond." And I use the phrase a lot, better to best. That's
Hmm.
how we take Surge from a mediocre employee where he's better than 50% of the people we'd hire anyhow, and we take him to best, and that he's one of the best people that would leave the organization, say positive things about us, right? Those are instrumental. And I learned the real calibration of that when I was working at Twitter, and it's carried me through. I really had to dial down on it and make sure that I was teasing out that excellence so that I could deliver for the candidate and for the business.
Such good advice. I think we have treated reference checking as something we just have to do, we sleepwalk through it. We actually don't do a good job of digging in. There's a great book out there called, I think it's Who it's called, that goes
Oh,
exactly in
the
depth.
blue book, the white book with the blue letters. Yeah, I got
Yeah,
it somewhere on the shelf. Yes,
yeah,
sir.
you know
Yeah.
exactly how you dig in and how you ask those questions really give you the answers that you're looking for to get a picture of what that person is going to be in the actual workplace. So I agree completely. Brian, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to really dive deep on sourcing. I haven't talked about sourcing on this show yet, and I know that's something that you're really passionate about. Obviously, a lot has changed in the last couple of years with AI and automation coming in play. There's a lot of competition, different tools that you can leverage for sourcing. But where are we at now? Like, is sourcing dying?
So real quick, before I answer your immediate question, I want to give a shout out to Irina. Irina is one of the greats in
Yes,
sourcing. She's
she's
spoken
the
at a number.
OG.
She is the OG, and as we're taping this, she has announced her retirement. And I just
Yeah,
want to stop for a second and say, Irina, I've agreed with some things you said. I've disagreed with some things you said. But most importantly, I agree that you have made a sizable impact on sourcing and recruiting, and you and your contributions are going to be remembered for that. So I want to say that. Now, is sourcing dying?
yeah,
Sourcing as we know it is dying. It is passing away, and it is dying a very slow death. Okay? Jim Stroud invited me to SourceCon in San Diego a number of months ago, right?
yeah,
And I said, look, you can do Boolean all you want. And the OG sourcers, we love our Boolean. We love our Boolean search
yeah,
strings. But what you can't do is you cannot get ChatGPT to give you a reliable search string. What you can do is you can build a search string and drop it in perplexity.ai and have it bring you back really fantastic and elegant results. So one of my favorite things to do is before I get on the phone or before I present a short list for an exact search that I'm doing, is I drop my search string. Find me candidates from site colon linkedin.com/in space quotation marks customer experience close quotation marks open parentheses Apple or Salesforce or Microsoft, close parentheses. And I want it to bring me back profiles. And what it'll do is it'll bring me back 10 profiles, but it'll also give me a summary of those individuals, a three sentence summary. So I know before I click into a LinkedIn profile what that person does and who they've managed. Or I could say to perplexity.ai, and I'm very big on perplexity.ai. You get 10 free searches like this a day, or you can go pro, is that I will say, bring me back a list with phone numbers of CHROs in Atlanta who should attend the Evolve recruiting event that Anna Morgan is putting on January 30th. Bam! And it comes back with a list with phone numbers and email addresses. I say sourcing is dying. It used to be that I would go through the drudgery of finding individual email
yeah.
addresses, bringing them over to a Google Doc or to an Excel spreadsheet, loading them into a drip campaign, and then hoping something happens, right? You're still going to hope something happens, but
Yeah.
all those steps that I just talked about, they can be automated away with a series of different tools or with one tool. So there are a lot of tools on the market today that personally, like I reference Perplexity. Yes, I pay the $20 a month for it. Why? Because then all I have to do after I get that answer is say, put this in a Google Doc, or what email would you send to these people? And it puts a personalized email starter for each one of those people. And this is what Jim gave me the opportunity to show off at SourceCon. And to that, Serge, you know this. Everybody in the community knows this. Friday afternoon from like 2 until 6 p.m. It used to be 12 to 6 p.m., but my Friday's gotten a little crazier. 2 p.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern on Fridays. Those are my office hours. If you want to get together and you're like, Brian, I've got a problem. Yo, let's solve it. Check out the
Yeah.
hook while the DJ revolves it. We will vanilla ice that to death. Okay. Like that's my thing. And people ask me why I do it. It keeps me sharp. It keeps me moving in different areas and looking for different resources. Like I had a call earlier today where somebody was like, Brian, how do I find truck drivers? And I was like, You go to TikTok.
You do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Where
Yeah.
you find candidates is changing. Like we're very much used to the world of job boards. And if you think about it, still a lot of candidates, it's their preferred method of looking for a job is going on job boards because it can get confusing out there. You don't know what's legit, what's not legit. You feel if you're going on Indeed, LinkedIn, or wherever you go that it is going to be a legit job. Not always is, don't get me wrong, but I think one of the challenges that we're seeing, where I'm getting a lot of complaints from recruiters or talent acquisition managers, is I'm getting way too many candidates from my job posting that's being distributed to God knows where, right? Like I'm posting it Indeed, but then it's getting picked up by aggregators. And I just don't have the capacity to go through all these candidates. Instead, I'm not even posting the job. I'm just sourcing. And that's where I'm like, well, maybe sourcing was dying, but I think the current problem that we have right now with too many candidates, that a lot of recruiters are finding it actually easier to go source instead of just going through 1,000 applicants on a job board. Am I off track with that
No,
comment?
Serge, you're spot on, because like we had a conversation about this yesterday at a in-person meeting. Is that there's a role that we posted that has over 1,000 applicants. No level of layering AI is going to tease out who, what, when, where, and how, right? Is a better approach for us to go and find 20 people who have the skill set that we're looking for and reach out to them. So I'll let you know, I found 22 people that have the skill set that I'm looking for. I have 18 of the 22 who said, I can have a conversation Thursday or Friday. I can't have a conversation this week. What are you doing over the holiday break? When can we talk? I had 18 to 22. Now, my messaging is really not that complex. It is, Serge, happy Thursday. Want to connect with you about the next challenge that you're facing in your career. Period. Have you thought about what you want to do next? If you have, great. How can we build a bridge to get there? If not, would you consider this role at McAfee? Period. It's a very simple formula, right? I change it up every 20 messages because all these automation tools that you're using are going to be bunk and you're going to end up in the
Yeah.
spam filter. Um, you asked me about tools. There's a tool that I use called Magical. You can find it at getmagical.com. How much does it cost? It's free. If it's free, it's for me. And what Magical does is it allows me to build the template and to drop it. If I find Serge on Instagram, I can drop it on his Instagram. If I find Serge on Snapchat, I can drop it on the Snapchat. I can drop it in all these different places, so I make sure that I'm having that multi-touch attribution.
I love that you're sharing those tools because there are so many great tools that we're not leveraging out there. And we get stuck in our day to day as far as how we recruit. We look in our ATS, there's candidates, we screen them, move them along the process, but we're not thinking of different ways to attract those right candidates. But I'm curious, if we look at the side of the job seeker, being a job seeker is extremely difficult right now.
Oh, dude, it's
And
taxing.
most people don't get approached by recruiters. So you're sourcing, but you're a small minority of recruiters that actually are proactively sourcing candidates, I would say, right now. So I need a job. How do I get through the process so I can get hired? Where should I go to apply for jobs? What tools should I leverage? And in that desperation, well, sorry, I shouldn't call it
No, no, Serge,
desperation.
Serge, no. I mean, like, look, here's the thing: is that you go from there's fear, there's
Yeah.
doubt, there's anger, there's resentment. There are all those feelings. I think desperation is a perfectly good word to use in the context of that. So
Okay.
what I would do, because I think that most of your audience are recruiters like me,
They are.
um,
Exactly.
is that there's a job board that nobody goes to.
Okay. Tell me that job board.
It is the Y Combinator job board.
Yes.
Y Combinator has a series of HR and recruiting jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. They're posted by the founders of Y Combinator startups. If there is a job posted somewhere, and this is universal for any job seeker, whether you are looking for a job to be a sanitation specialist, a water treatment professional, a shoe salesman, a dress designer, whoever, what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah.
And I think that if you're reaching out to hiring managers and saying, hey, Jim, notice your team is growing, not your hiring, your team is growing. at Mission Co. What problem are you trying to solve? Question mark. What is your most pressing issue? Question mark. Do you have 15 minutes for us to talk about how I can solve your problem? Question mark. It sounds salesy as hell, but if you are not an advocate for yourself, how can you be an advocate for anyone else?
Agreed. That is fantastic advice for any job seekers. And there's a lot of recruiters that are job seekers right now. But where I was going is there's so many different things you can do. But the easy way is you're seeing lazy AI apply bots, right? That
Oh,
are
totally. Yeah,
applying
yeah.
to a
Sorry.
thousand
Yeah.
jobs in a day. And we know, like I was looking in my market in a city of 1.5 million, there's maybe 3 jobs that I'm actually qualified to apply. So how am I applying to 1,000 jobs, 100 jobs in a day? The other side of it too is AI assisted. So basically taking my information, taking the job description and aligning my resume to look like I'm qualified for the role is a complaint that I'm getting. So I'd love to get your take on lazy apply bots that are applying to 1,000 jobs, and just your overall thoughts around leveraging AI to help you apply to jobs by making your resume cover letter better. What's your take on that one as well?
All right. So first off, as a recruiter, I don't read cover letters. I don't know who's
Okay.
requiring them in this day and age.
Have
I'm just
you
going to out.
ever read cover letters? Have you ever read in your
I
18-year
used to. I
career?
used to when I was
Did you? Yeah.
doing pharmaceutical sales recruiting. I read recommendations. The question that you asked is, "Hey B, how do you get past these hundreds of thousands of resumes that are incoming that are enabled by AI?"
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, I am using brute force to understand and to go through those resumes. I'm doing two things is that I'm reading through probably 200 to 300 resumes a day. I'm using keyword matching and keyword ranking. And then those candidates that I shortlist, I send them a code assessment, right? I'm sending the code assessment to maybe 50 or 60 individuals that look on paper like they can do that thing. So we use CoderPad. We have a great team
Mhm.
there. Amanda is excellent. She delivers incredible customer service. Chase has been a great shepherd through the process of getting us going and moving forward. But what we've been able to do with CoderPad is that we've been able to deploy CoderPad in a way that it prevents a candidate from copying and pasting code. It does the visual proctoring, locks down what can and cannot be used. And you can change the options. You may want somebody to be able to
Yeah.
copy and paste from their GitHub profile. But the reality of it is it tests them in a real world environment to make sure that they know fundamentals of machine learning, or all the way up to experienced machine learning engineers that are working on doing algorithms based on transformers like Hugging Face that you can pull off the shelf. It is such a necessary tool that it goes through and it cuts through the people who say on paper what they can do and what they actually will be able to do. And to
Mm.
Amanda and Chase, I got mad props for you guys.
So, do you think job seekers should leverage those lazy apply tools that you can apply to 1,000 jobs to? Would you do it?
Well, so every job that I've gotten in the past 10 years, I knew somebody.
Yeah, me too.
So, Serge, this is a little bit about me, is that I have a list of people that I call my Hot 100, and I reach out to 20 of them, 20, 25 of them every Friday in the morning, and it's a text message or a phone call, and I alternate through it. And
Yeah.
what I'm doing is I'm saying, "Hey, Stu Morris, who I spoke to you this morning, Stu, love you, doing SEO work at Home Shopping Network. Um, I'm asking Stu how things are going in Tampa, Florida. What's going on? I'm having a conversation with him, two individuals. Inevitably, Stu is going to ask me, "What are you working on?" And I say, "I'm working on this machine learning bit." And he's like, "I can't help you." He can't, right? If Home Shopping Network needed a recruiter to work on machine learning and Stu knew about it, he would probably call me and make the
Yeah.
introduction. That's how I bridged the gap to every organization I've been to. I've still had to go through a rigorous interview process. I still have had to show that I know my Boolean basic. I was like, "Do you really want me to do Boolean for you? Because we're going to go to Thunderdome today, right?" But like, I think that you've got to network. We talk about social networks, and easy apply is a you called it lazy apply.
Well, there's easy
Yeah. No,
apply,
no, dude,
which
I'm
is
with you on that. I'm super with
well,
you on
but
that,
but
right?
there's easy apply, which is just like the Indeed one-click apply, right? Lazy
Right.
apply is leveraging an AI tool that applies to hundreds, thousands of jobs automatically without you even being involved in the process after the initial setup. I guess there's a discussion on both. Easy apply, clicking to hundreds of jobs on Indeed is about doing the same thing of leveraging a lazy apply tool. It's just is done automatically. And to your point, if I'm going to focus and really be dedicated to my job search, leverage the network that you already have. But what I'm saying is the majority don't. They think it's a numbers game. And there's been advice from career coaches out there that's saying it is a numbers game. You have to apply to as many jobs, qualified or not qualified, apply. It doesn't matter. And I think that's
But
really bad advice.
I think it's really bad advice. I go back to being your own advocate, right? Serge, if you're a CEO of a company, you let everybody know, not that you're a CEO of a company, you let everybody know that you're in the business of selling a solution. Every
Yeah.
candidate has the potential to be a solution to somebody. If you are not telling everybody out there, hey, I'm looking for a job, I want to be a school bus driver. If you're not telling everybody that message and getting it out to everyone that you know,
Yeah.
you are doing yourself a disservice. I know that you think you might be an ask hole. That's ASKHOLE, a person who asks a lot of things and doesn't expect to give anything in return. Create a reciprocal relationship, create a network, create that conversation, right? Get uncomfortable. Do
Yeah.
something that you haven't done before. Reach out to somebody and say, hey, do you have a minute?
To your point, building a network and being active with your network is how I've gotten every job in my career that I can think of for the last 20 years. So it's fantastic advice. There's also a lot of folks that this is never a consideration, right? Like they're thinking, I'm going to do my job, then suddenly they get laid off. And they're like, oh, I didn't do any networking. I did not focus on my job search at all. I don't
Who do
have a
you?
network.
Okay, so
I'm just
so
going to
wait a minute,
apply
wait a
to
minute.
as many jobs as possible.
Yeah, but you do have a network. Is that you have that person that you grab a beer with. You have that
So,
neighbor that you ask for a cup of sugar. So Serge and I both have children. You have that school teacher that you take your kid to that you could strike up that conversation.
yeah.
It's everywhere. People have to take off the blinders. They can't wear blinders as big as my headphones, right? They've got to, and they can't be so myopic. They've got to tell everybody, I'm looking for a job. This is the kind of problem I want to solve. That's it. And that's the quality conversation.
Love it. I think you're exactly in the right path. Let's look at talent acquisition departments. Obviously, the last couple of
Oh,
years, the last 4 years have been very challenging. Obviously, if we go back to 2020, 2021, just like, especially in the world that you're in with software engineers, it was almost impossible to find them. And if you did, you had to pay double the market rate compared to the last couple of years. A lot more applicants for these types of jobs, pretty much every job. And talent acquisition departments have been decimated in some ways. I always say we're the canary in the coal mine. We're the first to get laid off. We're usually the first to get hired. But what evolution are you seeing in the talent acquisition department in the next couple of years? Is it going to keep shrinking? We're going to leverage automation and technology more? Or are we just in a down period as the market shifts back to an employee-led marketplace?
I'm going to say something really weird.
Please do. I would
Okay.
expect it.
All right. So, what I expect is I expect that the organizations are going to grow headcount, but they're
Yeah.
not going to grow recruiter headcount. I'm not saying this is what McAfee's doing. This is totally Brian's theory, is that I keep seeing tools out there that want to cut the recruiter out of the sourcing
Yeah.
process and put that on the desk of the hiring manager.
Yeah.
Okay. I looked at two tools this past week that both said, oh, well, we don't work with recruiters. We work with the hiring managers direct, and we have them input their requirements, and it sources the candidates and it messages the candidates on their behalf. And the first conversation is with the hiring manager to figure out if this person is worth their time. Then it's passed over to the recruiter. I think that HR teams are going to stay small and nimble, TA teams are going to get even more smaller with more automation. And I think that there's going to be a shift left of putting those responsibilities into hiring managers and line managers and directors, and letting them be the people who run their business and empowering them like a CEO to make those critical hires.
How do you feel about that? Do you think that's going to work?
I think I need data.
Yeah.
Like my gut reaction is twofold, Serge. Is like part of my gut's like, hey dude, I don't want to be out of a job. I still want to be super recruiter and find people. I think there are flaws with that technology. I don't think that things are going to change dramatically for the next 4 to 5 years. I think there's got to be that adoption. I mean, I heard from somebody who owns a sourcing tool. We'll say that it rhymes with the word FinkedIn. Thank you, Evan White, for this hat. I love it, Evan. That is that we'll say that a sourcing tool like LinkedIn, in this day and age, it doesn't have a 60% recruiter usability.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why people are saying, well, maybe I should cut my LinkedIn license and go with somebody else. It's because 60% of their recruiters, only 40, like half of their investment, people aren't using. They're just sitting on. They're like, I'm not going to send an email. But we also know that there's kind of this dark funnel of marketing that you've got to send the email. You've got to have your employer brand. You've got to layer all these different optionalities onto it. I think until all that can kind of come together, I don't think you can cut the recruiter out of the loop.
No, I agree. The issue that I've had working with hiring managers over 18 to 20 years, this is not something they want to focus on, and rightfully so. Like, they have a business to run, although I do think who you hire is the most critical aspect of doing any job of being a manager. But do they really have that passion, or they take the time that if we're relying on them, the candidate experience is going to drop even more because they're just not going to get to them on time or give them feedback and all the things that a good recruiter should be doing. I think the other thing that we're going to see maybe evolve is candidates are always going to go to job boards. I don't see that
I
dying.
don't disagree with that.
I've been
but
in the
Serge,
space, the job board space. I went to work for Workopolis in 2010, and everyone was telling me job boards are dead. They are not dead because candidates are going to go there. But job boards have been driving quantity, and instead of focusing on quality. And what's the difference, right? Like, if I'm driving 1,000 candidates, I'm getting paid. It doesn't matter that only 4 of them are qualified. I think we're going into a world where the recruiter or the talent acquisition department is going to be like, no, I rather get 10 qualified candidates and I'll pay you more for them than I will pay on a click or whatever the case. Do you agree with that, or where do you think that is going? Where do you think the
Serge,
job
I
board
like
space
that.
is going?
I like that idea a lot. I'll give you another idea. Indeed, if you're listening to Serge, listen to what he just said. Go back and rewind it, play it again, and add it to this. Is if people are using agents to apply to thousands of jobs at a time, why can't Indeed or LinkedIn build a agent that checks your status for you, so that if Denise says, hey, I'm really interested in this job at April's company, could you check and see what my status is? And it comes back and it says, hey, Denise, they've received your application. It's currently with the recruiter and it's being reviewed. Oh, Denise, they've done some keyword matching and you're in the bottom 50% of the candidates.
Yeah.
And Indeed could monetize that and say, this is how you could get better, or what can I do? And I think that if you measure up and put agentic AI with the job board that you're talking about, that you super juice this thing for the future.
I love that. I think the challenge in doing that in the past has been that people just don't update their ATS in any way. Like, I just read something on LinkedIn this morning that candidates should be expecting a lot of rejection emails in the coming week because everyone's cleaning out their ATS before going into the new year, as part of the challenge of, like, with a job board working directly in an ATS where the candidates are not even being moved, right? They stay exactly in the same spot, even though there's conversations. We're not updating
We're
the
not clicking.
ATS. It's similar to as salespeople are not updating their CRM. It's always been a challenge, but I agree. I think there's a way to leverage technology to be able to execute on that. But Brian, we've been talking for a bit, and it's a lot of fun. I love it, but I think we got to come to a little bit of a close. So I have some rapid fire questions for you in this space. I know you love to read. What's your favorite HR or talent acquisition book that you've read?
Favorite HR talent acquisition book that I've read is Move Fast and Fix Things, and I can't remember who the author is.
Move fast, fix it.
Move
I'll find
Fast
it.
and Fix Things. Yes, sir.
What's your favorite podcast? Doesn't have to be in this space. What do you
Pivot.
listen to?
Pivot podcast with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway.
Oh, yes. So good. So good. What's your favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show right now is Skeleton Crew on Disney Plus. It's
Okay.
like Star Wars meets the Goonies.
Love it. Well, I love the Goonies. Love the Goonies.
It really riffs hard on the Goonies. It's less Star Wars and more Goonies.
Oh, it's
I would just
perfect.
say that. Yeah.
So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, Brian, what's the easiest way to get hold of the legendary Brian Fink?
8675309. No, I'm kidding. That's not my number. That's Jenny's. What I would say is just hit me on LinkedIn and
Yeah.
I'll get back in touch with you, or hit me up on Instagram or Substack. You hit me up on that. We're good to go.
We're good to go. Brian, always a pleasure. Please, to the audience listening, if you're not following Brian, you got to go check him out on LinkedIn and all his socials. He's everywhere, and there's a reason he's everywhere is because he's damn good at his job, and we're happy to have him in the talent acquisition community. On that note, thank you for the listeners of the Quality Conversation by C Square. We enjoy having these conversations, and I think eventually we'll get to the point that quality is just going to be synonymous with talent acquisition. On that note, have a fantastic
I hope so.
day.
I hope so. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you.